So thank you, Lee, for getting us live. Um, we'll wait for 1 minute before we get started. In the meantime, I'll be dropping this link to the docs. So those of you who just joined, you can mark your attendance by writing your name in this attendees list. And also, if you have any agenda items that you want to talk about on call, that is on Meshery/Meshery, you can drop them into. So we'll be sure to take those items. And yep, if you have stable bandwidth, you also can turn on your videos. So all right, so welcome everyone again to Meshery's development call, which is a weekly call that happens every Wednesday. And so we'll talk about various PRs and development and roadmap on Meshery project, which is CNCF's 10th fastest growing project and also one of the most popular internship program in entire LFX. So check that out if you have not already. It's a cloud native manager which lets you collaboratively design, deploy, and manage your infrastructure. And you can think of it as Google Docs for DevOps. So if you have not checked it out, make sure you do that. Link to it would be in chat. Also, I'll be very quickly dropping this link, again, the docs link, just in case some of you have this, just joined, so that you have access to the docs. Make sure you mark your attendance by writing your name in the attendees list. And also, like, if you have any agenda items, you can mention them in these topics. So let's get started. We'll follow our tradition, and that is anyone who is new on the call, they can go ahead introducing themselves. I'll be taking a look at the participants. And Aryan, is it the first time that you're joining Dev Call? If yes, do you mind giving your intro?
Yes, I've joined the newcomers meeting before, but this is my first time to the developers meeting. Hi, my name is Aryan Nargotra, and I've been working as a data integration analyst from the last 2 years. And from the last 6 months, I've been learning DevOps and working on uh, some projects like microservices, architectures, and Docker, and getting my hands on Kubernetes. So I'll try to contribute to the project, and I think I'll be a I think it will be really beneficial.
Thank you for your intro. And I also see one item from you, so we'll be discussing that. That's awesome. Thanks for being here, Aryan. Then we have CAF on the call. So CAF, I think you are also, joining this call for the first time. Um, do you mind going next and giving your intro?
Yeah. Hey everyone. Uh, so I was there in the e-commerce meeting right then. So my number is Sari and I'm from India. I'm currently in my second year
CAF,
of
you're
undergrad.
breaking.
Sorry, am I not audible?
Your voice is, yeah. So um, if you don't mind, you can give your intro in chat because we cannot hear you. So
Am I audible now?
yeah, please go ahead. Perfect.
Yeah. So I was there in the previous newcomers meeting. So like I'm new in the development meeting. So currently I'm in my undergrad second year and I'm heavily into web development and stuff like that. So I'm like moreover into full stack and TypeScript and stuff. I have explored some sort of DevOps things just like Dockers and like getting my hand dirty with Kubernetes and stuff. So that's the thing that I'm currently exploring. I have done like some sort of Python and stuff, so I thought that it would be a great opportunity contributing to layers, and the project seems very interesting to me. I have done all the setup and stuff, so that's all from my side. So
Great. So on your commerce call, you sounded off that you would be interested in taking a look at the MUI migration PR. So you were setting Meshery UI. Were you successful in that?
yeah, uh, luckily I have like set up all the things, so I will be like moreover working on the MUI part, like the migration thing.
Great,
So
great.
I would be glad if you guide me on top of it.
Yeah, okay, sure. So we'll be
Yeah,
discussing a couple of those items that you can take inspiration from. So thank you for your intro, Kath. I
yeah,
don't think we have any more newcomer on the call, but if we do, make sure you give your intro in the chat. So
Uh,
with that, let's now, yeah,
Hi,
please go
I am
ahead.
a newcomer. My name is Rishabh. I am a DevOps engineer with over 3 years of experience, and I'm excited to contribute to Meshery and write some clean quality code. Thank you.
Yeah, Rashad, real
Welcome to the
quick, when
call.
you say quality code, do you are you more of a front end focus or a back end focus?
I'm
Not
more of a back-end focused guy. Yeah.
is Golang an area of comfort for you?
Uh, Golang, yeah, I have just started learning Golang, so yeah, it would be very helpful for me.
Nice. It'd be nice if it was helpful to the project as well. No, I'm just messing with you. Great. Hey, also on that subject of sort of back end oriented things is well, there's tons of GitHub workflows and some
Yep.
Bash and maybe some Python, and there's a bit of Rust actually in a different part of the project. There's some C++ in another part of different of the Nighthawk project, but I bring them up just to say I often ask about like Golang specifically because there's lots of it, and JavaScript and React, but um, there's a ton of open. Just as you go to explore and familiarize with the community and the projects, know that there's a ton of there's a ton of open need for Meshery specifically, but some of the projects around it with respect to GitHub workflows, which sometimes involves scripting. Actually, Jaren's was just introducing the project to Jaren's. What is it? GitHub's action script? What is it?
Yeah, GitHub Action script for like invite GitHub Action.
Yeah, okay. And how he's begun to lead us down that path, which I think is a little more powerful and helpful. And so just some other things to throw out, like one of the things that we don't do well, I'm interjecting now, I apologize, but just Rishabh's comment that got me going on this, that one of the things that we don't do a good job of calling out as a project is that like Meshery is here to help improve the lives of engineers broadly. That's a massive term, engineers or developers in the sense that you're sort of focused on infrastructure and or writing apps and helping make sure that they get deployed and run well. So it's a very broad thing. Meshery has a very broad scope, but one of the things that we are perpetually underserved within as a project, that is people that are here that don't know how to code and don't want to, like that you please come or tell your if that's not you, please tell your friends to come. That there is much around solutions architecture or solutions engineering, or like just using and understanding how it is that Meshery interacts with any of the few hundred technologies that it does. There's a whole catalog that's pretty small. There's like 200 designs. 200 sounds like a big number, but it needs to be more like 2,000, 20,000 designs. Like, how do you use some of this tech, and how does it run well? What are the best practices for running Prometheus, and in connection with Cortex or any of those projects? Meshery is here to offer that value to users and help them understand their infrastructure, collaborate over their infrastructure, and comprehend it visually. Yeah. And we don't have enough folks that join development meetings who show up proudly saying, hey, I'm not here to code, I'm here to contribute. Maybe it's just like, if it's just as a user, that's wonderful. There's so much that is as a power user, is like as someone who wants to publish content or create content. I don't mean like marketing content. I mean, sure, there's lots of need for that. There absolutely is. If you've seen the project's Twitter feed, you'll know that there's lots of need for content. It's not the busiest thing. But there's maybe some content that Awani will show you later she'll give some examples of some designs. It's more like cloud native technology content. How do you use those cloud native technologies? How does Meshery help you use them better? There's so much of that needed. So anyway, I don't know that that describes Rishab in any way. I just was taking the opportunity. So
Yeah, thank you for discussing the opportunities. I'll definitely look into them. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Rishabh and Lee. So then we'll be starting with the agenda items, and the first item is from Matthew, but Matthew sent word that he will not be joining the call, so we'll move to Aryan's item. That is on doc. So Aryan, do you mind sharing your screen and walking us through your changes that you've done?
Yes, just 1 second.
Aryan, maybe you need some time to. So, Aryan, it's possible that we could circle back to you when you are all set to share. In the meantime, we can go to the next item. If you're not ready yet. Looks like Aryan's voice is not coming through. So let's go to the next item. We'll circle back to Aryan's. So Chris, you are up next. I'll be taking a look if we have Chris on call. Looks like we do.
Yep, yeah, I'm here. Hi, I'll share my screen. We can talk about um, sharing now. All right. So yeah, I have a PR up right now. It's an initial swing at a documentation page for working on the REGO policies, which I guess power maybe what we call the policy engine, the Meshery policy engine. So this creates an initial, yeah, basically just like the steps necessary for my based on my own understanding, which I would say is still in process. I already have some good comments on this. I think I still have quite a few questions about how my own understanding of developing on these. So I've been working with the team on building that understanding. I can show the actual, let me see if the page is running. If not, I can show the actual page live. Should be. So I already have some good comments on this that I will take a look at. But right now it exists under the contributing section of the documentation. There's a new policy engine section. So the area I focused on so far has been around running these REGO policies directly without having to run the entire Meshery server. Because for me at least, I think working on these policies, some of these bugs and things would be easier without having to go through all the different layers of the application. So this is what the page currently looks like. Like I said, there's already some input on the pull request that I will factor in.
Nice. Yeah. Hey, Chris, related, or one of a quick question. Do you recall if the Styra maintainers or the Styra employees, the OPA maintainers that joined us a couple of months ago, do you happen to recall if they mentioned existing test harnesses or like existing framework for tests that people might want to run or to test out REGO policy?
So there's tooling around that. I haven't spent a ton of time with it, but there's a page on it in their documentation. Yeah, I don't.
Sure.
This seems like the equivalent of almost like I don't know, like testing maybe components of a policy. I'd have to look at that a little more. Um, I imagine it'd be like, I guess I've been thinking about this a little bit, and in our use cases, I was wondering like, um, is mostly what we would be after like a sort of given this design input, like basically assertions that the output is exactly what we are expecting? Is that?
Yeah, more or less, which is a little bit, yeah, which I hope becomes valuable. Like I'm not the strongest believer necessarily in unit tests per se.
Mhm.
Certainly not for as much as things change around here. It's a lot to keep up with. But
Yes.
tests kind of at the level that you were just describing. So if we had, so Awani might talk about this later, but she had published like 9 different designs and Awani, maybe you could share that link in the chat so that people have a sense of what we're talking about. But she had 9 different designs, each of them having different relationships described. So not exactly like a unit test necessarily, but a little higher up the testing stack. Yeah, exactly. If we were able to take a design, say that we expect this like kind, type, and subtype of relationship to be formed between these two things, basically to express.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When I look at this page, some of this, talking about like mocking functions and all of that, that starts to sound like brittle and difficult to me. So yeah, I was wondering if
Yeah.
if nothing else, maybe like it seems like certain bugs are coming in about these relationships. If we had a process where kind of like those bugs became represented in some sort of test that at least asserted that bug is fixed, then they could at least maybe protect against regressions, which also seem to be like a risk um, of these policies because they're so complicated or potentially complex.
Jarens, can you speak to that? I think you've done some work recently.
So basically, like in the UI, we try to test the relationship and doing some step like to interact with the canvas, and then we check whether the relationship is available or not.
So that sounds like it's already a start, but so that sounds good. Probably that tests a whole bunch of stuff beyond even what I'm talking about these policies, so that's good. And do you think that should be the focus, like that kind of end-to-end, as opposed to like more policy focused testing, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, right. Yeah, for my part, and by the way, anybody else that's on the call, you're welcome to chime in. Some of this is abstract if you haven't been around the project for too long. I consider that, Jarens, do you have a link, by the way, to an example of the tests that you've written, like how it is that you're doing really a functional or end-to-end level test with a relationship? If you share one of those, this will give context. Like my belief is that when you're doing end-to-end testing, that you get the biggest bang for your buck, like the most value out of having spent some time writing a test. Because this is like irrespective of all the code that gets implicated and flexed and used, irrespective of whether or not it's like completely correct and passes 100 different unit tests for all the different functions that get invoked across all these different components, and the end-to-end test is just like, hey, is the end of this result what was necessary or not? And at the end of the day, that one certainly matters and matters first. Whether or not someone could enter in a negative value in a unit test, or like whether or not under certain conditions a function of an integration test fails, those are important, but not nearly as important as like, is this happy path? Is this commonly tread path that people use the tool for? Does it work? And just like that super high level should be passing first and should be, I believe, the foremost focus. It's where you get probably most return on investment. So again, like for everybody else in the call, one of the ways that if you've seen a screenshot maybe or of a Meshery design, they can be visually interpreted. And when you have a design that Awani just shared some links to in the chat, if you were to open any of those up or look at them, there are relationships between components. Sometimes it's a line, we call it an edge. Sometimes that component is inside of another component. Since we don't have one on the screen, I'm forced to mime my way through it. We'll just play charades. It's like two components. Okay, nobody plays charades. All right. So in order to verify that those relationships are being evaluated correctly by the policies that are being described by Chris, we want to programmatically test those. And we need a mechanism to assert to what it means for a policy to have evaluated correctly. Because what Chris is talking about is like the fact that any of you here and Chris can write policies for Meshery to be aware of and use as it looks at all of the infrastructure that it's managing. So when it looks at a piece of infrastructure like a Kubernetes service and it sees a Kubernetes deployment, there will be a policy inside of Meshery that recognizes those two components and determines whether or not they're related to one another. And so we use Open Policy Agent internal to Meshery. We write Rego rules very generically. And we also use those in combination with relationship definitions, or we define the fact that there should be a relationship feasible between a Kubernetes service and a deployment. So it's feasible that they relate to one another. In a particular design, there's an open and ongoing question all the time. Do these two relate to one another? I don't know. Let's ask the policy engine. Hey, do they? And it needs to run the policies, evaluate the Rego that Chris was just talking about, and make a determination. Yes, there should be a line. No, there shouldn't. So we're seeing some lines here. So some of these should relate to one another. Some of them don't. And as we go to change those policies over time, we would want to make sure that we have a very healthy project that can, that runs through an automated set of tests to verify. And so, yeah, the end-to-end tests that Jaren's, I'm hoping, is going to show in the call later, end-to-end tests that use Playwright as a tool, like Cypress, as a tool for automating your web browser and looking at things as a user might. That's very helpful for, like, in the end, was there a circle around this thing or was there a line between them? Wonderful. We need that. That's one genre of tests. To Chris's question, I do believe that there's a high level of value at this more integration level, if that's how you could, qualify this category of, like, just taking the Rego policies that Chris and others are writing, just taking the OPA CLI, the Open Policy Agent CLI, and giving it a design file, loading it up with some Rego policies, and then making an assertion saying, hey, when you take this design file and evaluate it in context of these 12 policies or however many get loaded, I would expect that you tell me, yes, there should be a line between these two. So that expectation, that assertion, Chris can go start writing it out and make something to create this test framework. But before he were to venture to do that, others have written many lines of Rego and have come across the same thing. And so, Chris, two of the links that I dropped into Slack, Zoom, one of them is to this awesome OPA page or GitHub page, which just lists out a bunch of different integrations and tools around OPA. Yeah, there you go. Meshery is hopefully on there somewhere. And yeah, that's a better, like, and there's, as you search for the word test, like, there's a couple of references, and that's about as far as I've gotten. But yeah, the what you were showing just then with like what you were showing just then was it's a genre a little lower level than necessarily what I would have hoped for. It's more like a unit test level is what it felt like. Maybe
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I think so.
not that those are bad. It's just, yeah. So
Yeah, I think we should start with whatever the highest value is, and that feels like, I think, like you're saying, integration tests, like a little more Meshery focused tests rather than unit tests, that particular component of the policies.
yeah, that's my 2 cents. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think for me, for my takeaways, like I still need to learn more. I still feel like I only know, kind of understand portions of the whole policy engine. And have only kind of just started to build confidence and even really working with it. So I'll continue to talk to the team and ask questions so that I can understand better and continue to document and hopefully get started on tests and things like that to add more value.
That's great. Yeah, thanks for doing it openly as well, because there's a number of people who are tracking along. And so if any of this stuff interests you, go follow Chris. That he might feel awkward about me saying that, but stalk him, I guess, is what I'm.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm like I said, I'm still kind of at the early part of learning. So if anyone else wants to learn, come along.
Great. Vivek, what do we have next?
Yeah. So thank you for your update, Krish. So I'll just quickly ask Aryan if he's all set to present, so then we can take his item.
Yes, I'm ready. Sorry. So I was going through the documentation and I saw uh, some errors that I could make it more readable. It was like how to get your tokens, and there were two ways. The first one through the UI, and the second one was from the CLI. So for the UI, I tried to write them like in a step-by-step manner, so that it can be easy. Like click on the firstly, you can log in and then click on the your profile picture and get the token, and I try to elaborate those steps, like downloading the tokens and how to get it from the CLI then. So this was my first beginner level contribution, I think.
So thank you for your updates. We will wait for 5 to 10 seconds if anyone has any feedback. I'll also drop your PR's link in chat in case anyone wants to take a look.
Oh yeah, hey, that's great, man. Hey, all right, I haven't, for my part, I haven't taken a second look, but I mean, Ian, who's on the call, he might have, but it's helpful if or I'll ask this: were you able to capture the difference between how you would grab your token if you're using the local provider versus how you might do it if you're using a remote provider?
Yes, for the remote, there was like this separate link
Oh, okay.
uh, that I could understood, like that part.
Okay, nice. So what you have captured and articulated is with respect to the local provider, and there are details for that. And then,
Yes.
okay, all right, nice.
Thank you, Aryan.
Yes.
So yeah, please go
Uh,
ahead.
uh,
Continue.
yes, I wanted to ask uh, for now, like I'm going through the playground. I created my like first design, and I was watching some tutorials on how to how to deploy the Apache Cassandra. So like, is this the right approach for this project as to contribute into the DevOps domain? Like I'm familiar with the Go app. I've created some beginner and intermediate level projects like 2D RPG. Uh, Browser level games. So, which approach will be beneficial for this project?
Yeah. Does anybody else want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I would say since you've already attended newcomers meeting, now you can try joining these calls where we often make call for volunteers on a particular area that you can champion. So my advice would be to joining a div call and also bi-weekly CI/CD calls, and also following the
Okay.
discussions in Mystery channel because most of the times call for volunteers are there.
But just to make sure that make sure that the rubber meets the road, or to make sure that we don't just give you a generic answer that you sort of fumble, like really getting you some traction. Were you just asking like, hey, is it helpful and useful to create a few designs and sort of spend time in that area
Yes.
versus, yeah,
Yeah.
resoundingly, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
like,
for the third party tools into the DevOps, it will be beneficial if we could
boy.
create their designs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's a good way to make some friends too, because if you were to grab Jaeger or Prometheus, or any of the other tools,
Mhm.
it'd be good to take the design and ask that project, hey, does this look about right? Is this reflective of your best practices? Is this something that you would like for us to be promoting within this growing catalog of infrastructure best practices? So a good way to be able to go. It's an excuse to meet some other people. Um, there are, when you look at meshery.io/catalog, I'm not sure if it's evident that there are three echelon. There's three. Trying to think of the right word. Oh, three levels of curation for a design. And let me share the screen since we're not sharing. There is, I don't know if it's in the Meshery IO catalog. Is it, Vivek?
Uh, I think it's in cloud.
Okay. So I'm not sure if this is, so actually we have a call for volunteer. As I go to describe this, there's a call for volunteer to go implement this in JavaScript and CSS. As we look at, this is one version of the Meshery catalog, and these are different designs. And here's one of the ones that I was talking about that Awani recently made. So this is a really interesting one. It's got like all the relationships represented inside of it. So we might see the statistics go up on this one with downloads and clones and opens. And if you'll notice the yellow ribbon, official, or the lack of a ribbon, there's three classes of curation right now. And these, more or less are what you think that they are, which is, um, hey, you might find some content or some designs in here that don't work very well, or some that you would really want to rely on. And yeah, the better put together that they are, the more that we would want to bubble those up to the top, or make sure that that we're tweeting about them, we're sharing about them, we're highlighting the individual that has created them. So I keep saying Awani on this call, and maybe she's red in the face. Maybe she's going to get red in the face soon. I don't know. But what we end up doing is tracking, tracking, helping build people's profiles. Let me refresh here. And so she has a large number of designs that she's created publicly. They're available for anybody to go check out. 11 of those have been highly, she's curated enough that they're published into the catalog. So she's kicking butt. If you think about it, there's like 200 of them, and she owns a fifth of them. And so, yeah, so this is one way. So she earns badges based on that. So there's, and then we actually, I don't know if everybody was watching, but we end up tracking a leaderboard. So I guess I'm just trying to answer your question like completely in full, that like it is quite helpful and to just produce this sort of content. And we end up tracking like a leaderboard of content by various metrics, various points of popularity. Maybe those that get used the most, people take this and have deployed it, actually taken because the designs are orchestrated by Meshery. They're not just visual in nature, for as sexy as they sometimes look. They are also orchestratable, deployable. And so, anyway,
Yes, I received my first badge, so that's why I thought that maybe it's beneficial. And for the Go part, like, how can I get started to contribute to Go? Like,
Yeah, there's a relatively new maintainer, I think probably on the call, Matthew, and there's Hussein who's on the call as well. That these two individuals are a couple of the Meshery CTL, the Meshery CLI maintainers. Often, at least for my part, I will direct people to start there with respect to Golang and getting involved in Meshery as a project. Because it's a lot, at least for my brain, it's a lot easier to digest like this confined set of code about what a particular command does. And it usually fits into one file. It doesn't, not entirely, but and so it's easy and it's easier to comprehend and digest and understand and
like going command by command.
yeah, or at least like if you're yeah, I mean if your question is like, hey, where to contribute some Golang, it might be like within a given command, or there's a few new commands that need to be made as well. And then that forces you to also gain some familiarity with the server and just the overall function of the project, and then maybe you end up sliding over to the server and doing some stuff
Okay,
there.
makes sense. Thank you.
So thank you, Aaron. And talking on that, like we also have these open issues where you can, try publishing designs to catalogs. So I have already dropped this link in chat. Check it out if you would like to do that. So next up, we have this item from Tharan on docs only. So do we have Tharan on call? Yep, looks like we do. So Tharan, like, do you mind sharing next? We cannot hear you in case you're speaking. So. Okay, so in the meantime, Tarun is back. Let's okay, he's touched already.
Yeah, but since we can't hear him, it doesn't really matter. So, hey, Theron, you'll have to work on your mic, and we'll circle back to you. In the meantime, who's next? I've been talking too much. We got to make sure we get to Walter and Ian and Jingming.
Walter, you are up next.
Thank you. All right, so I have this one PR. I'll share my screen real quick. I haven't done this on a Zoom before. Let me see if I can get it to work on the first try. No. All right,
Just in case you need time.
How's that? I hope I'm sharing the right tab. So the task here was to rename some data size selectors because the ask was to remove remnants from Cypress integration or Cypress tests. So what I did here really was just look for the data side custom selectors that Cypress uses to locate elements, and I renamed this to data test ID, which is what Playwright uses. Now, what I'd like to highlight is there's these two files. Prettier formatted some of these files. So two of them were altered, some spaces were cleared, some double quotes were changed to single quotes. So I just like to highlight that and ask that this doesn't maybe break any special formatting conventions that Meshery tries to follow. But other than that, the only change that I did was really just changing data side to data test ID. So that's that for that update.
So thanks.
I think there might be a little bit of conflict with your local ID or setup and the linting and formatting that we use. That's it might have caused it. If you check, like there are some commands inside the make, like make format and make lint. So if you try that, and it might clear up this.
All right, I'll look into that. Thank you. So I did not know that. I'll see if I'm not able to figure it out. I'll probably ping you to maybe look for a way forward. And then the other thing that I would like to ask or to talk about is still regarding clearing Cypress from the repo. On the documentation, we still have a page that talks about how to get to the test to run with Cypress. Do we want to maybe move that page to archive or delete it altogether so that it doesn't exist anymore? That's a question that I'll wait to hear an answer to. And then for the end-to-end test, we don't have many tasks that try to direct potential contributors on what they need to do. I think when I was looking around, I did create one issue that was quickly picked up, and there's a PR that was made by another contributor. So the question is it okay to create a bunch of these issues as I go? And then once I do, what's the ideal next steps for that? Do I need to get a go ahead to then work on that particular ticket? Because I noticed that I wasn't able to add some of the relevant tags like Oktoberfest and maybe Good First Issue. A lot of these are really, at this point, they're really just low-hanging tickets. Maybe change a few lines here and then, nothing really spectacular, but they will contribute. They will help anyone who wants to get started with the end-to-end test. So what would be the ideal next steps for new tickets that are created by contributors as issues? That would be my second question. Another question that I have is and I did notice that
maybe that we can continue this discussion in Slack. So
all right, cool. I'll list this as questions inside Slack. What would be the ideal channel for this? Is it the CI or
yeah, you can go in Meshery CI. So
all right, cool.
Since
Thank
we are
you.
running we are running short on time, so that's why thanks a lot for those are great inputs. So make sure you drop those in the channel. Next up, we'll move to Ian's item on Playwright. So do we have Ian on call? Yeah, we do. So do you mind going next?
Yeah, would you mind sharing the PR? I guess I have to go into system settings. Zoom is blocking me right now. So yeah, I just wanted to bring up, see where we were with this PR. And last week we had some discussion about adding some sort of deterministic, unique data test ID to existing components. And I was able to dig in a little bit there. There's some discussion there. So I just wanted to kind of touch base and see where folks were feeling there and if we had a conclusion. There is a discussion in Slack, but just wanted to see if there's any outcomes from that.
So Jaren's and Ovid, you guys, thoughts?
And I can share a high level context of where that has gone if we need.
Yeah, sorry, Ian, I got lost with the test. Like you were talking about like adding the general test ideas to the system components.
Yeah. So we were. That's why last week we were seeing if that was possible. And in this use case, especially when we have a data table, what's going in through the data, if we were going to add something meaningful to those specific rows, it would be difficult as we have to parse the data coming in to find what is meaningful in those use cases. And then it just becomes too specific of a solution. And then is regarding in the context of what we're actually trying to test and keeping, the actual problem in mind, is that we want to, essentially test if a user can delete the row and then that the go through the delete modal flow and then that row is actually deleted. I don't think that we gain too much benefit out of the end-to-end test if we have a specific row in mind for this given use case. So with that, MUI components do have a certain data test ID associated with them. It's just usually a random string that you can select on. So I can pivot this solution in that direction, or continue just to select on a certain level of text, what you see in the solution right now.
Okay, like the MUI data test, sorry, that would be randomly generated.
Can you say that again? Sorry,
or we are using that also, like manually putting that idea. So I mean, like the MUI data test ID that you were talking about, like would that be randomly generated by MUI, or we are manually providing that like the other test IDs?
Yeah, I mean, you could just essentially select on, like I said, if row specificity doesn't matter here, you could just select any row, right? So you don't necessarily care. You could just select one of the rows of the table, and that makes it a little bit more generic than selecting a specific row. But when you're trying to select a specific row, in this case, one where you have a certain text of kind cluster that is connected, you need some sort of specificity of your selector itself. So with that, the MUI table is randomly generated, and it has no benefit in that case.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, I think part of it makes sense. Like, if we always use like some of the generic rows or random rows out of it, that makes the test a bit better. Or like we're not hard coding just particular rows there. And also, like another thing that we can use is like we can just use because these rows are usually some entities from the APIs. We could use the actual ID of the resource. Like if it's a Kubernetes, like it's a patterns table, then we can use the IDs of the patterns as also the test ID. So that would help with like knowing like which resource you are testing again. So it doesn't make like, well, we're not just checking any random resource. So we know like what resource we are testing and what the thing is. And also that comes just like we don't need to manually put all of those IDs.
I also think like we can like using the area label to have like cover for accessibility as well. So if we name the label very clear, we can use the title.
Okay, yeah, I'm not. Would we be able to comment on the PR, and I can update it given those suggestions? I guess I'm not sure if I follow completely, but my audio might have cut out just a second there. But yeah.
Yeah, like if you'd also open a Slack thread for the discussion, that would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah. I can start one over there, and we can all discuss.
Yeah, it'd be nice to conclude if we can, or at least partially, so that Ian can confidently progress. So to repeat part of what was just said is that there are some tests, actually, even when you're trying to be really specific and say, maybe the test is to figure out if a particular connection to one of the 10 connected Kubernetes clusters has been removed successfully. Maybe that's the test, like to make sure that Meshery is performing that functionality. And then ideally, if you have 10 of them, you'd remove number 3, and you would expect number 3, you would assert that number 3 is gone. And so you'd identify that in some way. Even a lack of specificity is still helpful. Like actually, it's probably more helpful to start with generic tests that are anti-fragile in nature, and we can start gleaning some amount of value. There, those generic tests can cover up positive negatives, or they can accidentally tell us everything is okay. The cluster that connection was removed. Turns out it was the wrong one, and so it can have the effect of covering, covering up some of that. But at least to start with, knowing that one of them was removed is probably more helpful. And usually it would be the correct one removed. And using the example that I'm using. Anyway, all I was trying to say is, sure, more discussion makes a lot of sense, but also if there's something that we're able to conclude here, that might be conducive to Ian making some progress.
I think right now just using the actual ideas makes sense, because like most of these resources we need to already like seed them, like because like if we are testing against like deleting or connecting to Kubernetes clusters, we already need to like seed those clusters or generate them. So we would already have the ideas of those clusters that you want to test against. So that would be helpful. And in the similar manner, whenever you are testing like again as some of the design interaction, like creating designs, removing designs, opening designs, we already have to seed those designs, and we already have the ideas of those designs or any resource in the similar way, and then you can test against them. But like this, like having generic only works like when we already have the data and we do need to generate their data. But when we already are generating the data, we have the context for that, and we can be precise about the interactions.
Okay, so I'll progress this to just deleting a row and lose the specificity in this sense, and then in future iterations as we go forward, we might get more specific. But right now, generic test to delete a row makes sense. Is that what I am hearing?
Yeah, like if we are not manually creating those rows, then yeah, if you just remove any generic row like randomly, that works for now.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Abid and Ian. So we'll be skipping these two items as the original authors are not on the call. Then we have this volunteers wanted. So Lee, do you maybe want to make this call for volunteers?
Yeah, sure. I'll make that. There's all kind. Yeah, look. Yeah, there's so many things that we're in need of as a project. This first one's there's a very long list, and I was going to write them down, and I got sidetracked. One of them is just that we're not doing the best job of representing Meshery's functionality in the README. Meshery was trending twice in the last 2 weeks. Pretty awesome to watch that chart go way, up and to the right. And as people were starring the repo, some of them, I have to imagine, were taking a look at what they were starring, looking at the README, probably, maybe they checked out the website, but probably checking out the README real fast. Well, I don't know that it's entirely accurate, or that just I had gone through real fast and replaced a couple of quick screenshots just to try to help capture some things. But we were like right there on the OPA stuff, the WebAssembly filters, this context-aware this does a really poor job of articulating any amount of value as to why you'd want to use Meshery. That's my fault. That's terrible. And that needs rewritten. And so anyway, that's one call for volunteers. There's a bunch. One of them is, hey, we're trying to write a Helm plugin. So Husseina, if you're on the call, I'm trying to ping you in Slack and on Zoom. I don't know if you're interested or have time, or if someone else on the call is interested and has time and knows Bash. You don't have to know Bash very much. We need there's an open project. There are 3 open extension projects for command line plugins for the Helm CLI and for kubectl. We've been discussing these on this call for a little while. One of them this is the wrong window. One of them is relatively close to being done. Husseina, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, Lee.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so
Today
don't,
your ping. Yeah.
nice.
So,
Then don't feel bad saying no. I'm just looking for somebody that's hungry to go wrap up this particular effort. I'll describe it real fast, Husseina, and like, as a matter of fact, if you
sure,
don't,
sure. Yeah.
if you don't say anything, I'll just take it as a no, and so that way you don't actually have to say no. Like it's okay. It's just, anyway. Here's one we're trying to get going. It's a Helm plugin. It's a Helm as a project. It's CLI. they have instructions for how to write a plugin. And it's not too big of a deal. Each OMA has been leading the charge on writing a relatively small Golang application right here, just a one Go file that helps you take a Helm chart and render it, take a snapshot, and send you an email. It doesn't really, like, all of that other functionality is handled elsewhere. Really, this is just a small plugin to say, give me a link to your Helm chart and your email. And it just asks Meshery server to go render the design, render the Helm chart, and send the email, all that stuff. So this is really small. We're on the tail end of this plugin being complete. It is in need of its installer being done. So there's a small like bash script that's needed to run and like download the architecture and operating system appropriate Go binary, and so
From a specific path, eventually, right? Like given a release from the Helm values or somewhere, and compatible version, basically get that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and there are. I'll promise before, just after this call, I'll drop a couple of examples to other plugins and like what they've done. And they've done extremely similar bash scripts as to the bash script that we have for the Meshery installer. Actually, the Meshery installer bash script that you've given so much to, it's way more sophisticated than what is necessary. So
Okay.
yeah.
And there is a pull request already by someone,
Yeah.
right? It
Yeah.
has some changes I have seen. So like it needs refining or a review or some more changes.
It needs some more changes. It only kind of gets us maybe 3/4 of the way there. Like and so that one's mine. Anybody is welcome to tear it down, throw it away, spit on it, kick it, or or to carry it forth any which way.
Okay.
Yeah, but that PR, you're right, is very much on point. It is trying to address that installer, which is exactly like you said, grabbing the right kind of a binary from some location. I believe, by the way, when you do a Helm plugin install and you point to like github.com, you point to the where the plugin is hosted, which is the repo. So github.com/meshery/ the Helm CLI itself, it does a git clone behind the scenes.
Okay.
And so the bash installer is like, it gets smaller and smaller. Like they take care of some of the challenges already.
Okay. I will
Thank you.
take a look into that PR one more time. I just glanced through it. I have to understand more.
Thank you. Oh, that's great. Oh, yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Lee and Hosanna. So looks like we are on time, but I will ask if there's anything important that we need to share today in the call. If not, then we'll wrap up the call here today.
Can I ask something?
Do you mind taking your question in the Meshery channel, Yatin?
I'm sorry.
So you are going to ask some questions, right? It would be helpful if you could ask those in Meshery channel so that others
Yeah,
can
sure.
take a look or not on the call.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
So I was asking if there's anything that we want to discuss urgently in the call. I'll wait for 5 to 10 seconds.
Hello, Vishal. So I would like to present my PR. So if we have 2 minutes, I was
Yeah,
next
okay,
in the line.
so
So just I'll make
yeah,
it
okay, so
real
let's
quick. So
yeah, please go ahead.
So yes, so this was the issue that we are facing. So simple issue, we need to just um, rename some locators to data test to data test ID, and I opened my PR here. Second.
So we cannot see your PR. So maybe you can drop the link in. Okay, there it is.
Yep. So here was the main file where I renamed the test cases from test to test ID, and they were referenced in 3 files. This one, app.js, user.js, and header.js. So I renamed those as well. So if someone can review this, so it would be great. And I think I checked the build also; it's working fine. So if I can.
Yeah, thanks, Moise. Yeah, this looks fine. Jan and Sonia will probably merge it.
Yeah. So that's it. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Moise. So you already got one ready to merge. So. Yeah, so with that, thank you everyone for joining. And we couldn't cover a couple of the items that we'll be discussing in the next call on priority. But yep, if you are working on any items, in Meshery, you can present them on next development call that will happen on Wednesday. Also, if you want to join newcomers call, that will be held on Thursday. 1 hour prior to this meeting, you can join that as well. Link to that would be, the link to the calendar is in this header, so you can find that out. I'll drop this once in chat. And yeah, so thanks for joining. We'll see you next Wednesday. Till then, bye.
See you guys. Bye.
Guys, bye.